Well, my name is Julian Brown, and I am a young innovator. I have, at the age of 18, created a pyrolysis reactor in my backyard, which is a device that turns plastic waste into fuel. And then at the age of 19, I began innovating in that field and started to utilize microwaves. And utilizing microwaves is an innovation in this technology because there has yet to have been created an industrial level continuous microwave pyrolysis reactor. In short, there's not a reactor that operates off of microwaves at a big scale that handles our plastic waste. Hence why we have all our plastic waste issues. But what is a pyrolysis reactor? Well, that is a device that takes plastic waste or any organic matter waste for that matter, takes it in, and through heat, without oxygen being present, it actually breaks apart whatever is in there and breaks it back down to its original chemical constituents. And plastic waste comes from crude oil, so it breaks the plastic waste back down to crude oil. And as you may know, our fuels of this world are rooted in crude oil. So we're able to turn plastic into fuel.
I love that, man. It's so cool. And how excited were you? I'm going to ask you again, but how excited were you when you were able to make your first, discovery with like the Mach 1 and stuff like that?
It was very exciting, and I'll tell you why it was so exciting. Because being in society, we have always been told about the plastic waste problem. And in fact, it sometimes is even blamed on us as the consumers, even though we do our part to recycle and they just throw it in the ocean anyway on the back end, right?
Yeah.
But it's always been a problem thing, right? There have never been many solutions offered. Of course, we have the ocean cleanups, but there's never been many solutions based on like, okay, what can you do as an individual? Because you can't avoid using plastic no matter what you do. You buy things, you order things that come in plastic. And if you recycle it, it might end up in the ocean. If you burn it, that's not good. If you throw it in the trash, it's just in the landfill. Like, what can you really do? So when I found instructions online on how to make one of these reactors, and I put together the first one ever that I made, and I found out that it worked, and it wasn't just some internet magic thing. Like, plastic literally can be turned back into fuel in your own backyard.
Yeah.
It's so exciting because now I knew, okay, now there is this huge problem, but I, as an individual, can literally contribute to the solution.
And I think that's like forward thinking, because a lot of people, they're like, they complain about a problem, but they never want to look for a solution for a problem or create a solution. You know what I mean?
Exactly. And that's unfortunately a huge part of the world we live in currently. And I feel like a lot of that is because of mental limitations put on people. We've always been told in society, for example, if you want to do certain things, you need certain certificates or degrees to do certain things, right? So even though there's so many people who agree and are passionate, deeply passionate about problems like plastic in the oceans, we limit ourselves mentally in terms of what we can do about it, because we might think, oh, we don't have this resource, we don't have this backing, we don't have this degree, this amount of money, so we don't even try. Well, when you compare how the world was back then, the world was a lot more innovative in terms of people were just, they saw a problem, and your average Joe in his garage would start to just come up with a solution. We came up with some of the best things that way, like Velcro, for example, right, in somebody's garage. So I think that's a huge part of it. We need to start to see, okay, yes, we have problems, but you also have to think, just because big industries with tons of money haven't devised a solution doesn't mean that it's not possible for you. Maybe they haven't devised a profitable way to do it or a proper way, and you can be the one to do that.
Very true. And it's interesting that you mentioned about like people think they needed degrees, because it made me think about in the early, I guess, the late 1800s, basically more Black Americans had more inventions back then than they do currently today. And they had less access.
Exactly. And that goes back to the mental limitations, because if you are told your whole life that you need a degree or you need some type of thing outside of you to truly pull the inner creativity from within you out, then of course, even in the midst of having truly everything you need to start innovating and putting things together, you won't, because you're going to think, I need this thing first to even get started, when that's not true. And that has never been the case for pretty much all of the great inventors before us. They just started. Maybe a lot of them may have had degrees and stuff, but that didn't really play in a role of the inner creativity that was always within them.
Yeah. I also like to believe that, and maybe you can also agree that when you have like this burning thing inside of you, it's like, you know what? I just have to get this thing out. I have to create it. It needs to be done. Otherwise, I'm not completed. I feel like that's kind of how true innovators and true creators make themselves in this world. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You know, a large part of being able to create something, to innovate or invent something, and really be about it is you unfortunately and fortunately have to be obsessed with it. You have to be obsessed with the mission and with completing the mission, because the amount of setbacks you have, the amount of money and energy you put into it is completely irrational. Anybody around you in your life is going to tell you, you need to calm down, you need to chill out. But that fire in you is burning, and you get so obsessed with seeing it work and your mission and your purpose, and you make it, a part of your purpose to work on this thing, and it happens. There's no way that you can sit there and day after day after day work hard on it over and over again with all the ambition and it not get somewhere.
So true. And I agree. And Julian, can you give us all like a brief, as brief as you can, a brief story, origin story of, how you grew up, where you grew up to the young man that you are today?
Sure. So I'm originally from Tennessee, and my whole life I always been into building things. I always liked Lego blocks, all just any type of arts and crafts. Building things with my physical hands has always been my thing. And I've also always known that I believe in justice, and I've always been a part of environmental awareness when it comes to how we do things. Not very necessarily so environmental to the point where you may classify somebody as like a tree hugger, but more environmental in terms of the sense of like, okay, if we are creating things and we are dumping chemicals in our rivers, why are we doing that? We need to have a respect for this great natural environment. That's always been very intrinsic in me, just as much as building things has, because like I said, I believe in justice, and I believe that's an injustice to all living things, the way how we have been doing things and polluting our own living space and living planet, right?